perspective. When you get people to do a level 1 exercise, you relatively quickly expose their anticipatory models, what kind of anticipatory systems and processes they use, and you reveal the data that is their anticipatory assumptions. So this is actually quite an important research, but also information which is very relevant for then taking action. Okay, but all of this happens at level 1. And as I said to you yesterday, the level 1 exercise that we did, I want you to sort of forget that now, because we're trying to actually build our own models. So in level 1, what happens is we're basically informed by models which are tacit, models which we use all the time, and they determine a great deal of what we imagine in the future. Now for level 2, for the little exercise we're going to do this morning, which is playful, which is meant to be a sandbox, not a serious exercise to come up with the perfect model. It's to demonstrate that people can begin to create their own set of assumptions for imagining the future. Now, as I was discussing with Kofi this morning, there are many different ways to get people to build models. As I mentioned, we did a very literal version of that at the 9th UNESCO Youth Forum, where we asked people to build sculptures. So they actually built, sculptures. They sort of put them one thing on top of the other, and they built them up. They built a model physically as groups to demonstrate that we can be creative in the way we make our models. So this morning, for about an hour, what we're trying to do is to play with model making and trying to escape a little bit, it's not easy, from our existing assumptions. And the purpose is to demonstrate that this technique, which is a learning by doing technique, an action learning approach, is something that we can all do. And is an important step in the capacity building related to futures literacy. So that's the goal of this morning, breaking up into groups again, to the same groups. You have the learning intensive society, which is just meant as a provocation. As I said yesterday again, the learning intensive society is not a prediction, it's not a desirable future, it's simply my way of illustrating to you, using essentially the dominant intellectual framework of our time, how you can flip it on its head. So I used the dominant economic model, which is industrial, the dominant social model, which is meritocracy and the kind of processes of differentiation that we use on the basis of education and income, and the political model, which has to do with representative governance, as opposed to endogenous decision-making at a decentralized level, as a way to illustrate shifting our assumptions. They're not necessarily the only way to think about different assumptions for describing the world, but they give us the opportunity to think about water and to think about cities in 2050 in ways that could be radically different from what we usually think about. That's, again, not going to be a prediction, not something with preference. It's a way of playing with our assumptions. Then after that, when we come back, each of the groups will present their bullet points using the layered analysis breakdown. So it's litany, which is headlines, systems, protagonists, the actors, and the metaphor. After we do a little bit of review of that, we'll think about the implications between level 1 and level 2. And then towards this afternoon, the aim of the session is to, with Lamia, we're going to facilitate a discussion about next steps and how to think about taking this community and advancing our joint learning, because I consider it a work in progress, but how our work in progress can be put into the hands of real people in a rigorous way that serves their ends at the local level, and at the same time helps build our community of practice and the networks in Africa for the purpose of advancing Africa's development. So that'll be the afternoon. I'll also take a little period before lunch, probably, to walk you through the process again. Just again, from a pedagogical perspective, to recap, to recapitulate the points that we've gone through in this futures literacy exercise, and what are the attributes of a futures literacy knowledge lab as a collective intelligence knowledge creation process that uses the future. I know these are big phrases, but they're distinct components of a framework that allows us to practice building futures literacy using the future in many, many different ways. Okay, so enough of an introduction. Ready to go into group work? Yep. Okay, great. Thanks.
How much time?
An hour.
An hour.
Yeah, come back in an hour, unless you start screaming and say you want more. But that happens. But an hour should do it. And then we'll be in plenary in an hour from now. So with a little movie. It's one I talked about yesterday but didn't show. So just take a look at this. This is the visual metaphor. This is the reverberation. It's not in very high definition, but I think it'll give you a reference point just to start the discussion off. So it's a visual metaphor we can start with. And I just need to look at the birds as they fly. And I think one of the characteristics that's perhaps most striking is that there really is up and down, center and periphery are not particularly relevant categories. Meaning they collect and they read and combine and they go in different directions. And just another aspect of this video, this murmuration, is to keep in mind that there was no big leader starling, no big bird that said, "Aha, I'm going to invent a murmuration." Okay, the murmuration exists without design. The other thing to remember, of course, is that the conditions for the murmuration are very stringent. If there's a tower in the middle of the field, the birds hit the tower and they fall down. So there are very strict conditions, including the wings of the birds, the eyes of the birds, and the ability of the birds to react very quickly. So the murmuration is something that can be modeled fairly easily, mathematically, and therefore put into an animation, for instance. But the murmuration as an emergent phenomenon of evolutionary complexity is something that's absolutely incredible. And it reminds us, I think, of the need to be humble in the face of the richness of the world around us. So that's just to sort of set the stage. And now I'd like to invite the first group to come up. Which group wants to go first? Begin? Yes, absolutely. No.
Ils sont pas prêts, que d'autres commencent.
Ça marche? Ouais.
Are we starting?
Let's go.
Micro.
Okay?
Starting now?
Yep.
Okay, I will stop. That's all I have to make.
Need the microphone.